7 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few running backs I would start this week. The first guy, Chase Edmonds of the Arizona Cardinals. I know the last couple weeks here, it's been a mighty struggle for Chase Edmonds. Week 5 versus the 49ers, 6 carries, 15 yards, 3 catches, 19 yards, and a fumble loss. In Week 6 at the Cleveland Browns, 4 rushes, 46 yards, and 3 catches for 4 yards. So obviously those aren't going to get the job done here for Chase Edmonds. But this week he's got a good matchup in Week 7 versus the Houston Texans, who obviously are one of the worst teams and defenses in the league. They give up the 11th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. And right here, this Arizona Cardinal team's rolling as the best team in the league right now with 6-0. And Chase Edmonds, the first 4 weeks of the season, he was one of the better running backs in PPR leagues. But right now, he's been slowing down, but with a good matchup here on paper and a game where the Cardinals, in my opinion, are going to be running the clock out and doing anything they want on offense, I think Chase Edmonds bounces back this week here, and he's a running back, especially with a lot of buys, that I would start this week. The next running back's Leonard Fournette of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I said to start Fournette last week, and he didn't disappoint at all with a huge ball game at the Philadelphia Eagles. 22 carries, 81 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and he added 6 catches for 46 yards. So the last 3 weeks here, Leonard Fournette's been the man over there for this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team. And I know this week here in Week 7, he's got a pretty tough matchup on paper versus the Chicago Bears that give up the 10th least amount of fantasy points to running backs. But right now, Leonard Fournette, he's the hot-handed over there in Tampa Bay. He's getting the job done with 15 or more fantasy points in the last 3 games in PPR leagues. And right here, I think he does that once again, even versus a tougher, stiffer defense in the Chicago Bears this week. And Leonard Fournette, he's pretty much almost an each and every week start. And especially with all these bye weeks starting up the last couple weeks here, you definitely start him this week. The next running back I would start this week, Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. So Chuba Hubbard, he's been a good fill-in for Christian McCaffrey since Week 3 here. Chuba Hubbard, the last 2 games for him, Week 5 versus Philly, had a monster workload, 24 carries, 101 rushing yards, and he added 5 catches for 33 yards. And last week versus the Vikings, 16 carries, 61 rushing yards, a touchdown and a catch for 4 yards. So right here in Week 7, we know Christian McCaffrey is going to be out at least 2 or 3 more weeks after he got placed on IR last week. So right here, Week 7, a great matchup for Chuba Hubbard and the Carolina Panthers, where they go and visit the New York Giants that give up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. And this is a ball game where I think the Panthers, they're going to be up for most of it. And Chuba Hubbard, he could catch the ball out of the backfield and obviously run between the tackles we've seen from him. So this week here, I think he has another good game. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him finish the week as a top 10 running back and a running back to definitely start this week. The next running back's Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. So Henderson, he's been pretty solid this season here, especially the last 3 weeks where he came back from injury. Week 4 versus Arizona, 14 carries, 89 yards, and added 5 catches for 27 yards. Week 5 at Seattle, 17 carries, 82 yards, a touchdown, and added a catch for 17 yards. And last week at the Giants, 21 carries, 78 rushing yards, rushing touchdown and receiving touchdown, and added 2 catches for 29 yards in that ball game. So right here, Week 7's a great matchup for him, no doubt about it, versus the Detroit Lions that give up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs on the season. And once again, I think Henderson finds the end zone. And once again, I think he's going to crack 15 or more fantasy points in PPR leagues. And right now, anyone on this Ram offense, for the most part, is almost a must-start, and especially in a great matchup versus Detroit. So Henderson, I definitely would start this week. In the 5th and final running back, I would start this week's Damien Harris of the New England Patriots. Damien Harris, we thought he was going to be injured and out a while, but last week he gutted it out and played a good ball game versus the Dallas Cowboys. 18 carries, 101 rushing yards, and a touchdown, and added a catch for 7 yards. So right here, he's got a dream matchup in Week 7 versus a weak New York Jet defense that got the most fantasy points to running backs. And in Week 2 at the Jets, he went for 16 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown and a catch for 2 yards. So right here, the only competition, in my opinion, really for Harris is Rashawn Stevenson, the rookie running back over there in New England, who we saw have a decent ball game in Week 6 versus Dallas. But right here, Harris is still the workhorse. he looked pretty good, in my opinion, in that ball game versus Dallas, where he could carry a full workload versus the Jets. And the way this game's going to go, in my opinion, the Patriots are going to be up with a lead, and they're going to just keep running the ball in the second half. So right here, I think Harris finds the end zone once again in this one, and he'll go for 70 or 80 total yards at least. So that's a few running backs I would start here in Week 7 of the fantasy football season.